Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's little CACFP call. I think we look like we kind of leveled out. Thanks for taking the poll question. It just gives us a really good idea of who is on today. It just helps us answer your questions better. So we really have a great variety of people on here, daycares and schools and just at-risk programs, sponsors, providers, and then your role. So we really appreciate you being here. We have a couple of slides and I can kind of talk a little bit. Cassie, I'll let her do a lot of it as well. We just have a couple of things that we thought we would go over with you, just some just a little bit of information. And then really this is your time to ask questions. So we will answer any questions that you might have. We have a fairly small group, so you can unmute yourself or you can just type in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So again, this is just a little call, some information that we have for you tonight that we just kind of wanted to share is training. We have a lot of people that are using our training that's online, our self-paced training, which is fabulous. We love that you guys are using it. But we just wanted you to be aware that if you are required to do training on there, you only have 5 tries to take the quiz. We've had more than one person that has been taking the quizzes and they need to be reset because they've taken them over 25 times and they didn't pass them. So if you're required to take training and you're not passing it, since we do a lot of the Zoom trainings, we're going to have you come into our office in Oklahoma City and we'll do it Zoom, and some people will have to take it in person. So we just wanted you to be aware of that because we really want you to understand the material. And if you're not getting it with that OSDE Connect, then you might just need more one-on-one training. So we just want to let people be aware that if you don't pass the quiz in 5 tries, then you will be required to take the in-person training. When we do have the in-person training, others are welcome to come if we have space. It's very limited, seating is, so you can look for that in the training calendar. We will put the Zoom if you need to go to Zoom, or we will have in-person if we are having that training in person as well. They're only in Oklahoma City. And then Cassie, I'm actually going to let you talk about the next slide. The next couple, or I can talk about this and I'll let you get to the next one. So as you guys this year have had to do the year-end report, you guys all had to submit that in October to be able to get your application approved. Because as a reminder, we have to make sure that you're spending all the funds that we give you back into CACFP. So we needed a full year of expenditures and a full year of revenue. So a lot of you again, in October, you all sent that in. So that way we can approve your application. But we do have something that we think might be a little helpful for you for this upcoming year. And Cassie, this is where I'm going to let you kind of take over.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm hiding in my bedroom trying to keep it a quiet spot because my kiddo's in the other room. So I've got my AirPods in and trying to, hopefully he won't bust in and interrupt. But what Kendra is talking about is we're hoping that this next year, the plan is to get the application out quite earlier than what we have the last couple of years. We're hoping to get it out in July is the plan. And that, so hopefully we won't run into, the timing issue. We know it's hard. We get the application out and then you just have the 31 days to get it complete, which shouldn't be a problem if your stuff is up to date. But for some, that's challenging depending on how big your institution is. But the good thing about this is we're requiring the end of year report. And I know for some of you that are in here, specifically our family daycare home sponsors, because I did see we have a few in here, you guys have always done end of year reports since we've changed over to how you guys are paid on your admin fee. So that wasn't such a shock for you guys, but for everyone else, it was a new thing this last year that we required that end of year report or the annual expenditure, whatever you want to call it. And really, we just took any 12 months this first time because we were just starting it out and getting your feet wet with what we're expecting from you. But what you should be reporting to us is your fiscal year. Your fiscal year isn't our fiscal year. It might be, but it depends on how your institution, how your business operates. And the vast majority of our institutions operate on January to December. So that means that you really could be working on your end of year report that will be due with your new application right now. You'll be reporting on last January through December. And so we wanted to make sure you guys knew that you can kind of start thinking about that and getting that prepared, that if our application is coming out in July, you could already be working on your end of year while it's still fresh and you're doing all your other closeout stuff and submit that to your person now, and you won't even have to think about it when it's application time. So hopefully that will help move things along this next year.
Yes. And then the only other thing that we're going to kind of show you is that in your application agreement and the bottom part of the business maintenance page, this is where you go in and tell us what your fiscal year is. This institution, it happens to be October to September. But again, a lot of you, it is January to December. So if you send that in now, you do not have to send it again in October, which is great. So if you send it in, so if it is from January to December and you send it in kind of around January, February for those months, you will not have to resubmit it again in October. We will already have it for your application approval. So,
and I will say that we are working on another thing that we hope that comes out with the new application in, tentatively in July, that you will have the ability again to upload stuff to your own application. So you can go in there and just submit it. And you won't have to mess with emailing us stuff anymore. So I think that will help too.
Nice. And so, now it's time for answering questions. So great. So go ahead and start. I'll let you answer this one, Kathy.
There's no timeline. It's only required in order for you to be approved for the new year. I mean, I guess that is your timeline. So just like with this last year, we couldn't approve your application for the new fiscal year until we had it. So you've technically, if you operate January to December, you've got well into October to get that to us. But the earlier the better, because then it gives us more time to process those things. And we're not it's really hard for us. Applications seem to pile in. When we opened the application this year, we opened it in October 1, and we gave you until the 31st. And the vast majority of those came in the last few days. So we were really right on the deadline of getting you guys approved. So if you guys can submit it to us as soon as possible, we can already have it approved, reviewed and approved, and you'll just be one step closer to having your application approved when October comes around.
Any other questions or topics or anything? It doesn't have to be questions and answers. If you have any comments that you want to state, we're here to listen to any of it. That's kind of what this is just about. And that it's for the year-end report, which is you have to send in 12 months of expenditures and 12 months of revenue.
I'm muted.
Hi, Kathy.
Go ahead.
Kathy. I actually have a question. Sorry, I'm on the phone because we closed a little early because of the weather. So,
Sure.
My name is Michael Wyford. I'm with the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa County. I have a question about the expenditure worksheets. So, what we noticed is that there is not anything for non-reimbursable items. Do we just leave those off the expenditure worksheet, or how does that go? We try to stray away from non-reimbursable items being on the same receipt as CACFP, but like, for example, we may accidentally have like jellies on there, and so we want to make sure that we put it in the non-reimbursable, and so I just wanted to double check on that.
Do you want to answer, Kendra?
Sure. So yeah, there's really no column for non-reimbursables. What we would just suggest that you do is if it's on your receipt, just mark it out and then adjust your total of your receipt and just put that in the food and milk. But we really don't have one for, but I understand that you want to, it looks nice to see that. We have that on the food purchasing form, but we just don't have it on the expenditure worksheet. To be honest, I just don't think there's enough columns for everything. So that's one reason why it was left off.
Right. And then
okay, yeah,
go ahead. Well, I was going to say the main purpose of our end of year is to make sure that, number one, you're spending an unallowable cost. So we wouldn't really need to know about those unallowable ones on there, and then to make sure that you're not making a profit. So for the purpose of that end of year and expenditure, we don't really need to have those on there anyway.
Okay, that perfectly makes sense. Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure, and and if I'm leaving them out by accident, if they needed to be anywhere or not, I just wanted to double check on that.
They just need to be backed out of your, what you're charging off to CACFP, like Kendra explained on those food purchasing forms.
Yes. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Leanne brought up a good point, reminding everyone to go to the view claim summary. We seem to have that happen often where you, especially for those of you that are multi-sided in the claim. So when you're going to submit your claim, always remember, once you put it in on that first page, go to the next page and make sure you're submitting and going to view claim summary and submitting your claim there, because we don't even know it exists until you hit that button. So thank you, Leanne, for that.
And then do you want to answer regarding the application?
Our year is July to July, you're a school. So, and our schools, it really, I know you guys are trying to juggle a lot in different fiscal years, and we're hoping maybe that will help our schools out too, if we can kind of come in line with, you know, our agency operates on July to June. And so we're just hoping if we can back it up a little bit, it'll be helpful for, you know, our schools too. Your application will still apply to October through September. We're just going to give you the opportunity to get it, have more time to do it than what we've been doing in the past. And it's not saying, you know, that that's our goal, is to have it out in July, but you never know from year to year. With new changes, it might vary, but we want to get it out as early as possible, and we want to make sure we have any new changes we might need in there, because, you know, sometimes we have to change policies or add new things, or who knows, auditors, USDA, things come along, we have to add stuff, but it's still due by the end of October. So that policy will be the same that we've had the last few years. If you've not submitted by the last day of October, you wouldn't be eligible to claim October. We're just giving you a bigger window of time to submit.
Yeah, because like Cassie said, we have some institutions that have a lot of centers. So it's a lot of sites, they're big multi-sided, just to give them time to fill that out.
Yeah. Well, and as you guys know, if you've been with us, you know, you've done an application at this point, you're on this call, there's a lot of back and forth, you know, very rarely, and I don't say this to be, you know, rude or tacky, but very rarely do we get an application that's 100% perfect and we can approve it right off the bat. There's always usually something we got to kind of send it back for. So it's also going to give us more time to have that back and forth, and we're not trying to rush that deadline.
So Lori, it says, is this what we put on the annual expenditure reimbursement worksheet? I'm not quite sure what you're referring to there. If it's it, so you put all of your allowable expenses on the expenditure reimbursement worksheet, and then your reimbursement on there. Because we just have to see what you spent on CACFP. We have to make sure that all the money that we're giving you is going back into the program, if that helps.
Yeah, and it is exactly what you're filling out every month. It's just the summary of each month on one report, basically.
And a lot of really good questions here about items that can and does not need to be on the expenditure worksheet. So if you do have an unallowable item, you would mark it out on your original receipt, just mark through it. Or so we would know that you're not charging it off. But it is true that there are some things like condiments or ingredients, certain ingredients can be put on there. They are considered allowable. Like for instance, if you make a pepperoni pizza, you make a pizza from scratch or close to scratch, and you put pepperoni on it because the kids really like pepperoni pizza. They don't like cheese or sausage. The pepperoni is it's not creditable towards a meat alternate, but it is allowable to be charged off to CACFP. There are certain things that are not allowable, like sugary cereals, sugary yogurt, donuts. Those are unallowable expenses. Even if you serve them, they're unallowable per USDA. So those you would have to take off. But yeah, condiments like jelly, that is something you could actually leave on there because it is considered an allowable expense for CACFP.
I got a direct message from someone that asked, I think questioning what months they would submit. Susan asked this question. And so if you're talking about the end of year report, it all depends on what your fiscal year is, what you operate on as a business or an organization, which varies. You know, all our schools operate on July to June. A lot of our nonprofits do operate on the federal fiscal year, which is October to September, but the good majority of our people are for-profit and they operate on January to December. So it just depends on how you operate.
Hey, Cassie, we operate January through December. My question actually was, so you want me to go ahead and submit, as I've closed 2023, I could go ahead and submit that to you now? So you're looking at my 22-23 year?
You're always reporting to us your most current completed fiscal year.
Okay.
So what you would submit, if you waited until October or whenever we put the application out, right? If you waited until then, we're going to ask you for an end of year report and whatever your last completed fiscal year was. So no matter when you give it to us, your last completed one will be last January 21 to 22. 22,
Okay.
January 22 to 22.
Right, right. I know.
Yeah, last year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
For this year, 23, the CACFP expenditures doesn't match the monthly expenditure worksheet. I don't think I understand your question, Debbie.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Every month we do the expenditure worksheet, or I do, with my cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I break down a spreadsheet.
Oh, I get what you're saying now. So it doesn't match exactly what your projected budget is.
Yes.
Well, and that's the thing about a projected budget. It's never going to match exactly. And I think for family daycare homes too, we've kind of always held you guys to a different standard that we're kind of trying to implement with everyone across the board, as far as budget revisions and things like that. Because you guys have always kind of, and I say you guys, I was part of you guys for many years as a family daycare home sponsor, and we always had to submit the reports for budget revisions and things like that because it was more detailed what we had to do on the sponsor side. And I know it's frustrating that it's never going to match exactly, but we kind of have always expected that of you guys. But we're kind of stray away from that. Like, it's a guideline of what you think you will spend, and then by the end of the year, it should closely reflect what you have done. But I don't, the expectation of it matching exactly is not reasonable. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but we're kind of trying to train it that way, that it is a projected budget. And as long as you stay within those parameters and you don't go beyond more than what you've budgeted, then you're fine. Does that make sense?
So you're wanting us to do the expenditure worksheet every month like we're used to doing, where it has the 21 line items. But then when it comes to the end of year budget, we don't have to, if you've got $50,000 down for labor on your budget, but the expenditure worksheet shows 60,000 you spend in labor.
Well, that would be if you spent more than you budgeted, that's going to be a reason you'd need to do a revision. You know what I'm saying? So there will be times, and everyone's going to have to get used to making those budget revisions because, and that's what we're trying to tell people, like, things are going to change. We don't expect you guys to go in there every month and revise your budget, but, review it a couple of times a year. And I know, Debbie, that you're used to doing that and doing those revisions, but the expectation for it to match exactly is, no, it's not going to match exactly. But if you find yourself spending more in a line item that you don't have enough budgeted, then you need to do a revision to put more in that line item. Because if we come out and do a review, and like you said, you've spent 60,000 in labor, but you only had 50,000 approved, we can't allow that. So.
Okay, I think I'm making it harder because I'm just used to doing it a certain way. And so I'm just can't wrap my head around doing it a different way.
Well, and for so long, you guys did that, the budget, what you have always done prior to this year, where it's all detailed and broken down in those different line items. Everybody got the chance to do that type of budget last year. And so we realized it didn't work, that budget. And and how many family daycare homes we have on here? I think 4 or 5. I feel like I'm just talking to you guys, but anybody that's a sponsor will have done that budget, and you would know what I'm talking about. And now everyone else will know. It's very hard the way we had that set up last year to make it very practical to get your actual budget to fit in down to the penny, and so we've kind of backed up and simplified, hoping that maybe being able to put in whole dollars and not make it so complicated that then you can work within your projected budget easier. I'm kind of talking in circles, but I hope that makes sense.
So is there any way next year on the expenditure worksheet, we can group it into 4 or however many you filled out on the CACFP expenditure, group it into those 11 instead of the 21?
Yes, so we do, and that was after the fact that Kendra and I talked about that we do, yes, we need to work on making those reports match what is in the budget. So yes.
Okay, because see, that's where I am looking at the expenses. Well, the expenses would be the printing, the postage, the heat and air, all grouped together, correct?
Right.
Okay, I
Yeah.
understand now. Thank you.
So Chris, I see, can multi-sited institutions combine all sites to one EOY report? Well, if you have a report, like if you have an accountant or any other report that you have, you can submit that. You do not have to use our form. If you are multi-sited, we really don't have, what we do have is we have the sponsor and site profit and loss sheet, where every month you put the sponsor and each site on there, and you just take what was on the expenditure reimbursement worksheet and transpose it to this one per month, and you would send 12 of those in. I don't know if that answers your question, because we really don't have one form that you can put all sites for every month. And then there's another good question about if you're having cheese and crackers and you want to add ham, can you leave the ham on the form as an allowable expense? You can. Just some of the things on there, I know it gets very, I was actually talking to Cassie about this, was it today? We were talking about, USC is very clear on some things that can be allowable, even though they're not creditable, but there are some things that are like, no, you cannot, it's not creditable and not allowable. But like if you are doing a sandwich and the kids really like ham sandwiches and they eat them very well, and the ham's not creditable, the bread still is, the cheese might be, so it is just considered an ingredient, so it is allowable. It's really the things like cookies, granola bars, the sugary items, those things they're very particular about and say, no, it's in, they have Q&A that says, no, those are an unallowable cost. So
I would make sure with something as controversial as ham though, document very well on your menu that was not any portion of the creditable meal. It was just, an extra. Yeah. I have another message that's directly to me, and I'm not sure I understand, but I'm going to read it and answer what I think you're asking, and let me know if not. So how can you be sure that the budget shows what I think your institution pays versus what CACFP pays? Does it matter if the center costs are covered by the institution, or do you just need to see that the amount of money spent is greater than CACFP? So it really just depends. Most of you guys are supplementing. I mean, this is meant to supplement, to reimburse you, to help you provide more nutritious meals that you're already providing, right? So many times you're spending way more on your meal service than what you're getting back in reimbursement. And so, yes, we do want to see those other costs above and beyond. Is our goal to make sure you're not making a profit? Yeah, because you can't make a profit. But we do also like to see that what does it actually cost you to spend or to operate this program, and the fact that you're able to operate it and get, you have other money to supplement it. That just means you're in a financially viable institution. I mean, that's good for you to show that you're spending more than what you get back in reimbursement. But yes, the goal is to make sure you've spent it all and it's on allowable costs. So if I didn't answer your question, let me know.
you guys are asking some good stuff.
Yeah. I think we got all the questions so far.
Yeah. Do you guys need any clarification on anything? Any comments? You can give us comments.
So how does it work? Someone says, if we're using our personal money to provide for our children, there is no revenue. You mean you're using like your own personal savings to make up the, what you don't get in reimbursement? I mean, we don't want to see anybody have to use their own personal savings or credit or anything like that. But yes, that is something that you can use, whatever means you have to make, to not make a profit off CACFP and then make sure that you can still operate. it doesn't matter to us what funds they are. Hopefully that made sense. Yeah, we don't want to see anyone have to use their personal funds, but we know it's happened, especially through COVID. And new people that come on, when I have brand new ones that are starting on, they're having to do that VCA. A lot of them, that's what they're operating on. They've taken personal loans or business loans, and as long as we see that you have the funds available in the event that we can't pay you, then that's all we need to know.
We get this question quite a bit. It's usually the opposite of we want a list of creditable and allowable items. You do have a list of this. It is the CACFP crediting handbook. That's the best place to go. That lets you know if an item is creditable or non-creditable. Or if it's not in the food buying guide or in the back of the book in the other section, those items are not creditable. So that helps. You can look at USDA Q&As as well, but really if you have a certain thing that you would like, my biggest thing that I can tell you, if there's one thing that you really want to serve or you're questioning it, first go to the CACFP crediting handbook and it will tell you if it's allowable or not allowable. It might say maybe. If it says maybe, or if you're still just not quite sure, reach out to your program specialist, or you can reach out to us in the office, send us a picture of it, take a picture front and back and just send it to us. And we will be more than happy to let you know if it is allowable or creditable. But that's really where you should go first to see if it is creditable or allowable is the CACFP crediting handbook, which is, we sent everybody one, but it's also in the resource library under mail patterns. I'm questioning myself now. And then, and that's where the food buying guide is as well.
So another question, let's see. Your husband works and has to buy groceries for daycare. So it goes back to, because some of these messages I'm getting directly, so that's why you might not see on your chat. But
go for it. Yeah.
It doesn't matter who buys, well, it doesn't matter what funds are used to buy the food and milk for the program, as long as you're documenting what was purchased and that we can track it and make sure those were really your expenditures, because we have seen cases of where people are turning in receipts that actually don't belong to them and claiming credit for them where they weren't really their purchases. So if you wonder why we're looking and asking for bank statements now, it's not because we want to dig into your information, and we don't as a business, we don't care about how you're spending your money. We care about how you're spending our money. And so I'm glad you asked that question, because once you start paying for things, you have those commingled accounts is what we call it. We asked that question on your VCA, and a lot of people don't understand what a commingled account is. You have one bank account and you're using it for DHS deposits, and you're paying your payroll out of it, and you're just, we see all kinds of stuff being used out of those accounts. Just be aware that if you have multiple accounts that you are relying on, say your husband uses his personal debit card to go and make these purchases out of your personal account, it is very likely we might have to request those bank statements to verify that those purchases were really made. And so I think that some folks think that's intrusive, and we're, I don't know, but that's the reason why we have to look at those things. So I just wanted to say that so you're aware that it could happen that we need to request documentation of where those purchases came from. But as long as you can prove it, and that's the food you serve for your meals, we're good.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that a little bit. We do really highly suggest in general, just so you can see what's coming in with CACFP, what's going out, is having, if you can, one bank account for CACFP deposits, and then pay out of that as well, and then one credit card. But we understand if you're at the store, it's like, oh, we need milk, I'm going to grab some. We completely get that. But this is one way. And like I said, it does let you know how much you're spending on CACFP and how much that's coming into the account as well. So that might be helpful if you don't want us to look at other accounts.
Absolutely. It's not required, but it certainly helps us, and it will help you in the review process. Jeffrey, your question will only be understood by all the other family daycare home people. So family daycare home sponsors are paid in a much different way than any of you other folks. And at the end of the year, we have to reconcile family daycare home sponsors and what they were paid. And they can't make a profit, but they can choose to carry over up to 10%. And historically, there's not normally much that that ever people try to spend up their money. But the question is, does it look negative when you have to return money? No, we're not looking down on you if you've spent far less than what you received in reimbursement. It means you've been good stewards of our money. You're not wasting it. We would much rather see that than go out on a review and find that you misappropriated the funds just because you were trying to use it up. So don't ever think that. So let me see. Okay, so I do think maybe we have a family daycare home provider on here, and that was the question about her husband buying the groceries, and I can see why she might be confused. So yes, please call your sponsor and see what they need you to do, because you don't have to keep receipts at the family daycare home.
Yeah, that EAT program is even much different than any of our other programs. So
okay, I got another direct message. How does the breakdown of the reimbursement work? Is there a certain percentage that goes to food and milk and a certain percentage that goes to salary? Well, that's a good question. And we could give you a gray answer, just like most things in CACFP. For sponsors, when a sponsor is anyone with more than one site, other than family daycare homes, because like I said, family daycare home sponsors are their own beast. But a sponsor of centers, they can spend up to 15% of their reimbursement on administrative costs, which would be administrative labor and expenses. But an independent institution, there really is no limit. There's no cap on the percentage, but the regs do say it has to be reasonable and allowable. I think there's one other word there: reasonable, allowable, and responsible.
I think that's the word, but I don't know. Yeah, I think it's responsible.
If Jennifer's on, she could.
Yeah, Jennifer, you know the regs.
But so we have to take that into consideration. If you can justify whatever percentage or whatever amount that you're requesting in your budget for that cost, we can approve it. Now, does that mean you'll always get that amount of money to pay for it? No, because to an extent, your budget is arbitrary. It's just an idea of what you think you might need to spend, but you might not. Who knows what could happen? It's not a guarantee. So as long as it's reasonable and allowable and necessary, reasonable, allowable, and necessary. I think those are the three. So like I said, that's a vague answer, but there is not a certain percent that can go to salary. It should be based on the number of hours they spend doing a CACFP duty and what you're paying them for their wage. You got anything to add on that, Kendra?
I don't.
I have a quick question. It's Angie. Hey, okay, so I know you're trying to say us to run this extra account, which in theory, it would work but all of our expenses in the CACFP are not just food. If that would be easy to bring the CACFP money in and then the food out would take it. But we have all these other expenses that go along: payroll, electric, building payment, insurance, all this stuff. So it wouldn't funnel out of that account. Was that account supposed to be like zero at the end of the month? Is that what but you wouldn't be able to show your building payment in it?
Well, I mean, what I've suggested to people who've had that same question is you could still, make a transfer of money over to your operating account for all those other expenses, as long as you've got the documentation to back up what that transfer was for, so that you can put it into those other accounts where you make payroll out of, and you already have, you're making your payments for whatever else you're paying for. So that would be one way to take care of that. There was something else you asked. I forgot. It was something I was going to say to answer that, and I've forgotten now. Did I answer your question at all, though, Angela?
Yes, you did. You did very good. So, but we're okay if I show my bank statement, like my money coming in and my receipts going out, and we keep our receipts all in order. Because like our payroll goes to a payroll company. We have a special thing that just runs the checks. So that could not be funneled back through the CACF. I mean, that money has to come out of my operating. I don't think I can run that to the payroll funds. I don't know exactly. But if we just keep records. You're just wanting record to show how it was done. And like I'm showing that receipt on my bank statement. You can see it and I can highlight it for you in advance.
Yep. That's exactly right. And like I said, we don't want to look at nor keep copies of any of the stuff that we have to keep copies of anymore. but we just want to be open with you guys and know why we have to ask for the things we look at. And it's generally because things have happened that have led us to that point. And so when we're talking about bank statements and things like that, yeah, we just got to track to see that it really happened. And I recommend to people, especially coming on brand new and they're pretty small. And for you, it's probably a little more complicated because I know you have more than one center, but if you could always have a separate account, it would be easier, but it's absolutely not necessary. And as long as we can track down, when we need to verify something, that's all that we need to know.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Oh, I remembered, because you said we have to make sure that account, I'm sitting here trying to think there was something else. You said we have to make sure that account zero every month. No, you don't. And that's something we've been trying to help you guys understand that. And we had people panicking when they were doing those end of year reports. They're like, oh, I've got a positive amount. Well, just because you have a positive amount doesn't mean you made a profit in our eyes. So the regs require states to determine what their way of determining what a profit is. And so for our state, to be consistent with how it's done in all our other programs, we say that if you have more than 3 months worth of expenses basically in your operating account, or 3 months worth of reimbursement, more than that, then that's a profit. And that's what we do when we come out and review you guys. If you ever, to pull out one of your last administrative reviews and look at the expenditure worksheet. If we look at the current month and you're if you're zero or negative, we stop there. But if you have even $1 extra, then we need to go back to the beginning of the fiscal year. And then that's why we have to ask for more. And we'll look at everything for the whole year, and we'll do all the calculations, and you can see on there, it'll tell us if you've gone above that 3 month average. So I've been trying to explain that to people, that you don't have to zero out every month. You just can't go over that 3 month average. So.
Well, that's information I didn't know. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, take a look at your last review, and you'll see it on the expenditure worksheet, how we calculate it.
And some people get very concerned about, well, we didn't zero out. And like Cassie said, you can have a little bit to carry forward. But if it gets too high, we just tell people that you just either give us a spend down plan. How are you going to spend it on CACFP? Or if you can't spend it, just to give it to us back. So it's not like it's the end of the world either. Some people were very, very concerned about what to do. Mm-hmm. But if you do happen to go over, then we'll just ask for a spend down plan of how you're going to spend that money. So. Well,
and I think implementing the end of year report, if you guys are, now that you know it's going to be something every year, if you're keeping up with it monthly, do it as you're going to see where you're at, because that's where we kind of realized we were missing our goal. Because if we come out and do a review in, say, November or December, well, unless you're just making like ungodly amounts in reimbursement and spending very little, you probably aren't going to have an overage. But that's not to say if you have a little bit every month, that by the end of 12 months, you might have more than 3 months. And we weren't evaluating that like we need to be. That's why we're making you do the end of year now. But if you guys are doing that monthly and kind of logging it as you go, you can see where you have an overage. And if you need to purchase something out of the norm, you can, so.
I do think you guys did not always realize what you can spend the money on. Mm-hmm. And it's really anything that you can use for CACFP. Like if your microwave goes out, maybe you need new pots and pans. Some bigger items people don't always realize. Now you need to make sure it's in your budget. We always say, check the budget, it has to be in there, but maybe your oven goes out and it's say $700. Then you can go ask to go change it in your budget, add it in there, and then we'll approve it. And we understand you don't always budget for an oven because you don't expect it to go out. But again, you can charge it off as long as it's in the budget. And even though it might be after the fact, I get that, but go in and put it in the budget, because if we come out, we're going to see the invoice for that. And then we're going to go in to check the budget for that. So,
and we had some this year, because we've kind of been trying to train that way and get people to understand it, that they were like, my freezer is going out, I need to plan to buy one. And we're like, well, go ahead and shop around and get what you think your price might be. Go ahead and put it in there, because if you anticipate on purchasing it when you get enough overage, and we did approve some that way. So you don't plan on things going out, but sometimes you kind of know when it's coming, and you can do that too. But either way, it's got to be in the budget.
And if you are, say, with a church or with another entity, and maybe you share the oven, you do have to make sure you prorate that cost. You have to prorate it on anything that is shared with something else, even if it's like
Right.
paper towels that you share with, say, the bathroom and the kitchen. So make sure you prorate that as well. Lots of good questions.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to put something in the budget that, you know, you're always going to probably have stuff in your projected budget that you won't necessarily use, because what you have to spend depends on, you know, how well your month went, you know. So I wouldn't, there were some budgets this year that we had some stuff that were like, well, you know, it doesn't mean we might not approve it right up front, but then we might come back and approve it later after the purchase actually happens. And make sure, you know, that, you know, you're following your procurement, and then if it's not over the certain amount, that you don't have to get approval and all that. But most of you aren't making huge purchases like that, so.
And just in case, sometimes it happens too, where they do ask for documentation to approve it in the budget. It doesn't mean it's anything wrong. It's just some things we ask for documentation.
Right.
On.
Like
Or
a good example, I'm sorry, I was
No,
going to
no,
say a good example is one where we had someone that was putting in the cost of renting a U-Haul. And we were just like, why would somebody, it was like a monthly cost. And long story short, and it was legitimate, like we dug into it and figured out it was not necessarily a U-Haul, but it was a delivery company that, long story short, that was the easiest way for her to get her groceries delivered. She hired this person, and you know, some things up front might look like, whoa, that doesn't sound right. So when we asked for a little bit more, and then we're like, because right up front we were like, no, you know, no, what's that for? But then when we asked questions and got documentation, it was 100%, you know, a cost we could allow. So we're not necessarily, when we're asking for more, just trying to be difficult. We just want to make sure that we're approving what we should be approving.
Because I know we come in to review you, but we also get reviewed by USDA and state auditors, and they can be pretty tough sometimes. So we have to cross our T's and dot our I's for that purpose as well. Everybody's getting looked at.
And we don't see that with, we get that question a lot with the requirement of us taking those copies of everything. And I know I've brought this up already once. We don't see that ending anytime soon. That's a requirement of the state auditors. We've tried to get, you know, with USDA on it. USDA doesn't even require it. It's 100% our state auditors, but in order to be in compliance with them, we have to do it. So we don't want it any more than you want to have to provide it. And we're trying to do it in the safest way possible. So I just always try to let you guys know that if you have any concerns about the secure storage of your files and you don't want to just hand copies over, contact us. We have secure ways to keep all of your stuff. So I just like people to know that. We review guys every year. No, we're required to review you by regulations require us once every 3 years, but there's other factors too. We have, you know, we cannot unfortunately review you every year if we felt like it was necessary. That doesn't happen very often. If you were ever SD, we always do another review the following year. But a lot of our, maybe not a lot, but there's several of our consultants. We have 16. We don't call them that anymore.
Program specialists.
Yeah. It depends on their caseload. Some of them do it every other year. Some do once every 3 years. It really just depends. So it's not every year. We,
as USDA requirement, out of all of the daycares that we have, we are required to review 34%. So that's the minimum that we can do. So that's why some may do them every other year. Sometimes you may get it every 3 years, then it turns around to be every other year. It's just because of requirements that we have to follow.
Yeah. And that's true, because sometimes at the end they have to, because the program specialist has to meet their quota, for lack of better words, and they'll have to pick someone up at the end. So.
Anything else? Leanne, do you have anything you want to add? I don't know of any other program specialist on, but if anybody does have anything that you want to just add throughout there, things that you're seeing, which I know you may not be full into CACFP reviews, you are more than welcome.
Just always remember that even though when you're up for review, when it's your year, you get the announcement, you get an email from me that says, hey, it's your year. But then beyond that, your review is unannounced. So please, please, please make sure you don't have, your owner, main person, you don't always have to be there, but your records do. And somebody that knows how to access them has to be there. So just make sure that those are being maintained and available. Our SDs, the vast majority of our SDs that we get are just simply because of inadequate record keeping. It's very preventable. So remember, if you need help, reach out to your consultant now. Don't wait for a review. When they show up for an unannounced review, it's too late at that point. We're there to do the review. We can't provide technical assistance then. So if you don't understand something, reach out to me, Kendra, your specialist now. Because, our goal is to help you guys be successful, not come in and write you up. I know it doesn't feel like that always.
Well, I will kind of jump in here too about the every year review. Now, the state auditors did require something starting last year about claim validation. So you could be selected for claim validation. We try not to do it if you've been up for review that year. And it is, Cassie has to, do you want to elaborate more on, because you're the one who actually does those.
The claim validation?
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing that I don't want to do it any more than you want to have to be subjected to it, but they said we had to. So claim validations are to try to identify what's considered a high risk claim. And three times a year, I pull claim data and I look at it. I look for certain things like if you're block claiming. I don't know if any of you remember what block claiming is. That means you're claiming the same amount of meals for the same number of meals for every meal, or if you're claiming every day of the month, or you're claiming all meal types. There's all kinds of different risk factors that we've decided that we'll look at and see if you're considered high risk. And at that point, if you're ever selected, and you won't be selected, if you're up for review that year, we're not going to ding you twice. So I won't select you if you're up for review that year. But don't panic if you ever get that email from me that's like, you've got 3 days to send me all this or else. I know it's a lot of paperwork that you're going to have to send to me. It's basically like a mini review. Don't panic. Just if you can't get it to me in this short amount of time, it's just we have to go by our requirements and what our instructions came up with. You have 3 days, 3 business days. But I'll set up a file for you to upload it in. It usually takes me several weeks to do these batches. So you might send me your stuff and you won't hear from me for a while. I've only had one instance in a couple of years that we've been doing that it was turned into a review and somebody unfortunately became SD. All the other ones I've done, they might have been considered high risk, but once I saw the documentation, it was fine. So just because you might be claiming, the same amount of meals for every meal doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong, but it's one of those risk indicators for an example. So it's just a little mini review that I do in the office.
And you can only get pulled for that because since you do it 3 times a year, you can only get pulled 1 time. You can't get pulled all 3 times. So.
Right.
Yes, except for this class, and that's in general. But for this, we're not giving credit for this, but in any other time that we do have any Zoom trainings, please do, yes, go to the CACFP training calendar and register for that because it shows up on your business maintenance page, and that's essentially your certificate. So, so just a reminder on our trainings, and again, this is just a Q&A, so you don't need to do it for today. We're not giving credit, but normally, thank you, Sherry, for reminding everybody to please go and register there. And you can always even do it after the class, but that's just our process that we do to give you credit for attending.
And I will tell you too, she mentioned in the very beginning that our training, unfortunately, if you can't, if you need more help passing a class after the 5 times online, we're going to open those classes up. I don't know if you mentioned that, but some people just like that in-person training. I'm a terrible test taker, so I would jump on the opportunity to come in and do it in person any day. So just know those are available for you if it's convenient to come into the office. We're starting those next month back in person. So I think we all kind of miss a little bit of in-person stuff. So we're excited to get that started.
I just want to reiterate what Cassie said about contacting us if you have a question about whether or not something is credible or not. On page 5, it looks like this. That is our names, our emails, and our cell phones. Take a picture of something, send it to me, send it to your consultant or your program specialist now, but just send them a picture. We can look at the picture, send us a copy of, or a picture of the ingredients. We can tell you whether it's creditable or not. And I have had several centers that forgot to go in and do that claim. So that's a real important step to getting your reimbursement, to just go in and make sure you do that view claim summary and certify your claim. So I just wanted to reiterate that because I've had several centers that were past the 60 days and then they had to ask for a one-time exception. Yeah. So that's a big headache for everybody involved, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate that whole thing.
And we try, we put the big red banner at the top and we send out emails to try to remind you guys, but you don't always, the right person doesn't always get the right email, which I have another direct message that the answer to that question will be, no, we haven't fixed the email going to the right person yet. We are still working on that. If you know anything about software and computers and all that, it takes time. So our goal is to eventually be able for you, when you register for a training, to put your unique email address so that when we email you the information, it doesn't go to that main person who probably didn't register for training. So we're working on that.
And that is the one thing about, and I know why it's set up that way, but someone does have to have login access to go to the training calendar to register. So it unlike the resource library that everybody has access to, not everybody does have access to the training calendar. And yes, beef bologna is creditable. Regular bologna, you would have to have a CN label, but beef bologna and beef hot dogs is creditable. As a meat alternate, it is ounce for ounce. Jennifer, do you have anything fun to add? Oh, she's unmuted, but I can't.
I can't hear you.
I can't hear. She's unmuted, but I can't hear. Did they give you a laptop that the camera or the microphone doesn't work? That's so bizarre.
Worked all day.
And she's unmuted. That's so crazy.
Do you have anything plugged into it?
I always have to unplug my charger from my laptop in order for you guys to hear me. So I don't know if maybe that's the problem.
From your docking station?
Yes.
That's what it is. Maybe not.
That is so crazy.
Well, there had a question about a serving size.
That's a very good question about, and just in case anybody's on the phone and isn't looking at the chat, says, I have a serving size question. When we're putting the serving size on our menu, do we put the total ounces on the can? Like for fruit, do we count the syrup? So yes, so say that you have diced peaches at number 10 can, if you opened up the whole number 10 can and served that out, then just put one number 10 can. Usually what we do when we go to the food buying guide, there's one that we look at, and I know one does say with juice and without juice, but you can just put with juice or without if you want to on your menu as serve forms. But we do like if you just put the total amount that you served, and then we can go in and do the math on that and then ask any additional questions. So American cheese, if it says processed American cheese, it's creditable. If it says cheese product, it is not creditable. There are two different kinds. If it's the one that melts really well and usually individually wrapped, it is not creditable. Again, that's a great one that you can take a picture of front and back and send it to any of us, including your program specialist. And we can take a look at it to let you know if that one specifically is credible or it is not. Because there are some things that are both. It's a maybe, depending on which one you purchase. We haven't really talked about that. I think we could send it out to everybody here for sure. The Zoom meeting, if you want access to it. We might talk about having a section if we want to in our the resource library where anybody can go at any time to go out there and listen to this as well. But we have no problem sending this to everybody that was on the call. Our schools, we do a call like this with schools, and we do have a section that we might do that as well. We just call it our kind of our school call section. We could call this our CACFP call. There are things that you wouldn't get a certificate for, but if you want to ever go back and listen to what was said, we could definitely do that.
What about providers getting chickens? Can they serve fresh eggs on the CACFP?
I'm going to look at that, but I'm pretty sure the answer for that one might be yes. And the reason I would say that, because if I remember correctly, in America, there's no pasteurized eggs unless you're getting the liquid eggs. So I would think you might be able to. Let me double check with that. I know certain things like milk, it has to be pasteurized. But let me double check on fresh eggs because I could see why you would want to do that. And if Jennifer does know that on the top of her head, you can type in the chat. That's just so crazy.
I bet we'll have more stuff like that coming if the price of everything doesn't.
I know. I know juice has to be pasteurized. I know there's certain things that have to be pasteurized, but that's how you buy it in the store. But I know. So the question was about if a provider gets chickens, can they serve the fresh eggs? Because I do know that eggs are not pasteurized except if it's liquid. And I don't have my crediting handbook. I could pull it up.
That's what I was about to look up. We like questions where we have to look it up.
We'll see if we can look that up real fast while you're on here. And if anybody has anything. That is a very good question though. And I can see that definitely being the case right now. Because even when we're talking in Oklahoma City, you can have chickens. You can have, I thought 2, someone thought 6. So you can have chickens here in the city as well. Perfect. Yeah, so what we'll do before we send this out to everybody, we'll make sure we have the answer to that question, and then we'll send the video, and then we'll send that question out to everybody so everybody knows.
The crediting handbook doesn't really address that.
It doesn't.
No, it just says all forms of whole eggs are creditable toward the meat alternate component. So it doesn't really
talk about fresh eggs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is there anything else?
He can come see us, Cassie.
He's not happy. He wants in here.
Let him come in.
Oh, he's getting in trouble right now.
Oh.
It's late.
Do we have anything else? Okay, we'll get that. So beef bologna is creditable. If it is any other bologna or any other type of hot dog, you have to have a CN label or it is not creditable, but beef bologna and beef hot dogs are creditable. They're ounce for ounce on CACFP. And to be honest, that's such a good question about the eggs that oh, good job. Good job. Thank you. Perfect. Ask the health department. Those are my favorite. No, I'm just kidding. Which that does make sense because that is their realm. That is what they do. Thank you, Jennifer. Oh, there he is. There's Keone.
He throws a fit. Now he's bashful.
Well, it seems like the questions have calmed down. Is there anything else that you guys would like to talk about? Or if we are done, we appreciate you spending this hour with us. And we hope that
work. We hope to do this periodically. I hope you guys find it beneficial. As long as we keep having participants, we'll keep doing it.
Yeah. This was actually a really good group size.
Yeah.
That is so bizarre, Jennifer, about your mic not working.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Stay warm.
Yes. Thank you, guys. And again, just reach out to your program specialist or our office if you have any other questions, but we do hope this was very helpful. We'll try and do this again periodically. We may do some in the day, but it really, I think nights are probably better for this as well, but thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Maybe next time Jennifer can talk. Bye, guys.